in a minute. You don't have to do it. You don't have to do anything. If you sit here and you go, I don't think I want to take my shoes off, no one's going to come up and say, you owe me $50 and dump a bucket of ice on me. Okay? That's not the way this place works. You can do whatever you want as a free gift. We don't ask anyone to do anything, but I would invite you, for the sake of the story, for the sake of the whole point of the message, to put on the same footwear that I got on. Go. And if you're worried about the smell, next week we're talking about Noah and the ark. You want to talk about smell? Your feet ain't got nothing on that boat. This is Exodus chapter 2. About this time, a man and a woman from the tribe of Levi, these are Hebrew people, got married. Parents, talk to your kids. The woman became pregnant, gave birth to a son. She saw that he was a special baby and kept him hidden for 3 months. But when she could no longer hide him, she got a basket made of papyrus reeds and waterproofed it with tar and pitch. She put the baby in the basket, laid it among the reeds along the bank of the Nile River, which is in
Egypt.
Good, we're all there. The baby's sister then stood at a distance, watching to see what would happen to this baby. Soon Pharaoh's daughter came down to bathe in the river, and her attendants walked along the riverbank. When the princess saw the basket among the reeds, she sent her maid to go get it for her. When the princess opened it, she saw the baby. The little boy was crying, and she felt sorry for him. This must be one of the Hebrew children, she said. Then the baby's sister approached the princess. Should I go find one of the Hebrew women to nurse the baby for you, she asked. Yes, do, the princess replied. So the girl went and called the baby's mother. Take this baby and nurse him for me, the princess told the baby's mother. I will pay you for your help. So the woman took her own baby home and nursed him. Later, when the boy was older, his mother brought him back to Pharaoh's daughter, who adopted him as her own son. This is Moses. There was fear of young Hebrew boys being killed, being murdered, being slaughtered. So this was a plan of Moses' mother. Put him in a basket down the river in hopes that the Pharaoh's daughter, the princess, would see this baby and say, I'm going to keep it. I'm going to keep it as if it were my own. Sent into the river by his mother to avoid being killed as an infant. Raised not only by his mother, but by the wife of the daughter of Pharaoh. And we learn that as this young man grows up, Moses, there's this thread that he's got a bit of a temper. He's got no stomach for injustice when people are mistreated. In fact, Moses ends up, how many of you know that Moses is a murderer? Well, here, the guy that we've been going, Moses, great beard, great staff, great criminal record as well. Moses comes upon a scene where there is an Egyptian man talking to a Hebrew slave. He's mistreating him. Moses decides that he's going to kill him in the heat of the moment. He thinks that it's just the Egyptian, just the mistreated Hebrew, and Moses. What Moses didn't realize is that he was living in the Florida Keys. And just like living in the Florida Keys in Marathon, somebody always knows your business. Somebody is always sticking their nose into your world. Somebody else is totally consumed with when you go to Publix and why don't you go to Winn-Dixie? Somebody is all about what is in that shopping cart. Which restaurants do you eat at? Where do you fuel up your car, truck? When do you cut your hair? How long is that beard going to get? I've got a theory about why he's growing the beard. Can I tell you about his midlife crisis? I think he wore that shirt 2 weeks ago, and before that he wore it 3 weeks in a row. That's definitely his second cup of coffee. Is that a bit too much? Let's talk about Moses. We were talking about Moses, right? Exodus chapter 2. This is verse 11. Many years later, when Moses had grown up, he went out to visit his own people, the Hebrews. And he saw how hard these slaves were forced to work. During his visit, he saw an Egyptian beating one of his fellow Hebrews after looking in all directions to make sure that no one was watching. Moses killed the Egyptian and hid the body in the sand. This wasn't really in the heat of the moment, right? Moses picks up the shovel, looks around, turns off location services on his cell phone. Moses killed the Egyptian, hid the body in the sand. The next day, when Moses went out to visit his people again, he saw 2 Hebrew men fighting. "Why are you beating up your friend?" Moses said to the one who was starting to fight. And the man replied, "Who appointed you to be our prince and judge? Are you going to kill me as you killed the Egyptian yesterday? Oh, snap." I don't know why you guys are so fixated with TV shows. I need this drama in my life. It's right here. The plot, twist. You know what Moses does? He runs away. Flees the desert to a place called Midian. Clearly he does this because he doesn't want to be held accountable for his actions, right? While off in the foreign land of Midian, Moses, who doesn't have a tolerance at all for people being mistreated, loves to root for the underdog. There's some girls who are being mistreated by some shepherds. Moses steps in, remedies the situation. The father of the girls invites Moses over, sets up what we call a courtship in the old days, where he gives one of the girls to Moses. They are married, and they have a son. Shortly thereafter, the king of Egypt, the one who Moses is hiding from, the one whom Moses was afraid would punish Moses by death for killing the Egyptian, dies. And it seems that God saw this as the perfect time to invite Moses to wake up, to invite Moses into an incredible adventure that would change the story of God's people, would make Moses a character worthy of both Disney and Charlton Heston in years to come. Because what happened was that even though Moses left, and the Hebrew people were being persecuted, they were slaves, they were being mistreated, and Moses ran away, well, the injustice never stopped. Even though Moses had kind of turned a blind eye to what he already knew was wrong, to what he already tried on his own power, in his own way, in his own time, he tried to remedy that. Have you ever tried to do something in your own way, in your own time, not in God's timing, and maybe you didn't kill somebody and bury him in the sand, but it blew up in your face? And you go, I thought that God would have me do that. I didn't really check with them. It was one of those things where you do it, and then you go, oh God, could you bless what I've just done? Well, the environment never changed because it was never fixed. In Exodus chapter 2, verse 22, the Israelites continued to groan under the burden of slavery. They cried out for help, and their cry rose up to God, and God heard their groaning. He remembered his covenant promise to Abraham, Isaac, And Jacob, he looked down on the people of Israel and knew it was time to act. Know that while Moses is off making a family and running away, God's people were still suffering. And I don't want to lose this small piece. That when we experience, we live so comfortably, right? Every one of us. That when we experience even the slightest discomfort, how many of us are tempted to go, where are you? How many years did the Israelites suffer? You know, it's been said that God is never early, but He's right on time. And I don't proclaim to understand His timing, His ways, but I trust that He is good. And I've said over the course of this sermon series, it says there are things that rise up that surprise us about God. If you've got a God that likes everything you like and hates everything you hate, and you understand perfectly, you've made God in your own image. That's not God. Because there is a mystery that requires faith. There is also this reality that your brain is only this big. And you use what? 7%? 10%? Let's hope there's somebody out there smarter than you are. Moses was off, enjoying his wife, his son, his early retirement. He was being a shepherd. He had very little clue that something amazing was about to happen. And you will note that God does not always give a warning. I'm about to step in. Doesn't always give a foreshadowing. I'm about to act. Something is about to happen. It is, however, up to the person of faith in that moment to figure out, how am I going to respond? This is Exodus 3. The story continues. One day, Moses was tending the flock of his father-in-law, Jethro. You thought that was a redneck name. Jethro was the priest of Midian. He led the flock far into the wilderness. He came to Sinai, the mountain of God, and there the angel of the Lord appeared to him in a blazing fire from the middle of a bush. Moses stared in amazement. Understatement of the day so far, right? Though the bush was engulfed in flames, it did not burn up. This is amazing, Moses said to himself. Why isn't that bush burning up? I must go see it. When the Lord saw Moses coming to take a closer look, God called to him from the middle of the bush, Moses, Moses. Here I am! Which was probably said as he jumped off the ground and looked around, right? One, it's not normal for bushes to be on fire and not burn up. And two, it's not normal for a voice from the heavens to call out your name twice. Verse 5, do not come any closer, the Lord warned. Take off your sandals, for you are standing on holy ground. I am the God of your father, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob. When Moses heard this, he covered his face because he was afraid to look at God. And then the Lord said, I have certainly seen the oppression of my people in Egypt. I have heard their cries of distress because of their harsh slave drivers. Yes, I am aware of their suffering, so I have come down to rescue them from the power of the Egyptians. Lead them out of Egypt into their own fertile and spacious land. It is a land flowing with milk and the land where the Canaanites, the Hittites, the Amorites, the Perizzites, the Hivites, the Jebusites now live. Look, the cry of the people of Israel has reached me, and I have seen how harshly the Egyptians abuse them. Now go, for I am sending you to Pharaoh. You must lead my people out of Egypt. And Moses said no. Moses protested to God, "Who am I to appear before Pharaoh? Who am I to lead the people of Israel out of Egypt?" Stop for a second. Have you ever tried to kind of mislead God? You can kind of hear the humility in his voice, right? I'm not sure I'm the guy for the job. And Moses is really thinking, don't you know I killed somebody? I can't go back there. But in his prayer closet, Moses says, "Oh Lord, there's got to be someone who's a better speaker. There's got to be someone. Are you sure you've got the right guy?" Moses protested, "If I go to the people of Israel and tell them, the God of your ancestors has sent me to you, they will ask, what is his name? And then, what should I tell them?" This is on the spot. This is Moses' big obstacle. I can't go because I'm not sure who to tell them you are. God replied to Moses, "I am who I am." Which is this statement of, I'm not in the past. I'm just not a God right now. I'm also the God of tomorrow. Yesterday, today, and forever. I am who I am. And in that statement, God is able to say, I exist, I am real, and you think you got what God is figured out? There are no rules. There's me. And we've been getting that wrong ever since. We've been trying to think, well, God does this. God says, I am who I am. Another translation that is equally as accurate, God says, I will be who I will be. I think it's supposed to be ambiguous. Say this to the people of Israel. I am has sent me to you. God also said to Moses, say this to the people of Israel. Yahweh, the God of your ancestors, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, the God of Jacob, has sent me to you. If you have not, take off your sandals, for you are standing on holy ground. A few things that you'll note in this story. God can appear anywhere. Do you find it significant that God chose not to appear in a temple or a church or a place of worship? It has to be noteworthy that God showed up in the middle, smack dab in the middle of Moses' place of work. He was a shepherd. He was out in the field. Right there, God came to Moses. And I know that just about every man in this church has thought and said to me on multiple occasions, I can worship God anywhere. I can worship God out on the reef. I can worship God out in the bay. I can worship God when I'm mahi fishing. Absolutely. There's no way. There's no doubt. I guess the follow-up question would be, but do you? Because I know sometimes I don't. I get caught up catching fish if that's what I'm going out there to do. And if it's a rough ride home, then I'm praying a lot. God can appear anywhere. God can be worshipped anywhere. can use a coward who flees like Moses, restore him to face his fears using his newfound faith as a new foundation. God can use a murderer like Moses. God can use anyone. That has to be a takeaway from this. Moses was nobody. Too often, I worry that because of the Charlton Heston or the Disney portrayal, that we think Moses was a great man. The only great thing about Moses was he said yes to God. I know that's treading on some people's version of holiness to say that Moses was not a great man. Take off your sandals, for we are standing is holy ground. Sometimes God shows up. Something special or holy or sacred happens. And in true human form, we want to make that thing, that object, that place, that memory, that, well, I did X, Y, Z. We want to make that what's holy. Which is really just a superstition. You know, as we ease into the final slope of baseball season, you know, baseball's on TV. Just sometime put baseball on the TV. 3 minutes. There will be a man who will step up to the plate, and before the pitcher throws the ball, he's going to do something with his feet. He's going to undo his gloves. He's going to undo his other gloves. He's going to lock his knuckles. He's going to spin over his left shoulder, look over his right shoulder, and then he'll get this little waggle. At the same time, every time. Thinking, one time I did this, and I hit a home run. So I'm going to do it again. We have superstitions. We have patterns where we think, like, I did this one time. In the church, I worry that we're tempted to do the same thing. This one time when I fasted through breakfast, God answered my prayer by lunchtime. This one time when I told God, if he would just get me out of this speeding ticket, I would serve him. I see those flashing lights. I'm going to try it again. What makes the bush holy is not the fact that it's on fire. What makes the bush holy is not its location in the desert, just in proximity to the right cliff, among the perfect selection of grains of sand. What makes the bush holy is not what kind of bush it is, how many branches it has, how many leaves it has, how tall it is, how wide it is, how deep its roots go, how young it is, how old it is. What makes it holy is the presence of God in it. That's the lesson of the burning bush. This place, this church, is a great church. I believe it is the greatest church for miles and miles and miles. It has tremendous history. In the very beginning stages of what we're trying to do, this church does a beautiful job of loving outside the walls to our community. Something that we want to continue to do, something that we want to build upon. This church has years and years of the legacy of the saints who have served and worshiped God in this place. I believe that this church is made up not of walls, but this church is made up of God and his people. That he gathers here and has gathered here each week for 55 years ago. And I believe that even though this church has had some great moments in its history, that the very best days of this church are not behind us. The best days of this church are ahead of us. And the best days begin today. According to your timeline, whether it's your Facebook timeline or your actual timeline, you've had some great moments. That time in Little League, that time in summer camp, that vacation, you still think back on, that was a great, that fish. You know the one. That 10-pound lobster. By now it's become 10 pounds, right? 20 to 10 inches when you grab it. But now, you've had some great moments. But if this story tells me anything, it tells me that your best days are not behind you. Your best days are ahead of you, and they begin today. And somebody says, yeah, but I had some great moments, but I had some other moments, the ones that I don't post on social media, the ones that I don't even tell the kids about, the ones that I would deny if you asked me to happen. And I'll tell you, let me shoot straight, God won't change your past. God will not change my past. God didn't change Moses' past. He didn't change his criminal record because God doesn't have limits on who he uses. God can use anyone. In fact, God is most glorified when he uses the flawed, the broken, the imperfect people like Dustin, like Moses, like you, if you will let him, to allow his greatness, his newness, to do wonderful things. God will not change your past, you see, but he will give you an amazing future. So today, the invitation, God calls you into this great journey. God invites you into something new, something deeper, something bigger, something greater than you or I have ever thought possible. God invites us into something that we cannot possibly fathom or understand. God invites us into something with no rules, no limitations, and no end in sight. God invites us into him. God invites us into his love. You can't hold on to a weak faith and a struggling intellect and still talk to a burning bush. You can't hold on to all the rules that we have made up about church, religion, faith, and still follow the God who appears in a burning bush, the God who uses murderers to change the world, the God who parts the Red Sea, the God who goes to great and unimaginable lengths to save and rescue his people. So yes, the place where we are today is a holy place. Not because of the walls, not because of the stained glass, not because of the building materials, not because it has stood here through X amount of tropical storms, hurricanes, pastors. This place is holy not because I'm here. This place is holy not because you're here. This place is holy because God is here. And so if we could muster up a little bit of courage, faith, we take off our sandals, open up our souls, our hearts, our minds, to let the God of the burning bush speak to us. I invite you to open up your heart and your mind to hear God's voice this morning. I invite you to lay down the false ideas that we've carried for far too long, that God only likes to use perfect people, that God only likes and can use normal people, that God can only use old people, young people, middle-aged people, people with a family. God can only use God can only use someone who's been going to church their whole life. He showed up in the middle of Moses' workplace in his workday. His father-in-law was a priest. If it was all about God choosing religious people, wouldn't he have chosen Jethro? I invite you, I encourage you, I desire for you to throw down the false ideas that we believe about God, religion, faith, holiness, and open yourself to let God's love fill you today. Let's pray. Gracious God, we are thankful for the life of Moses and the story that it tells us, and with a little bit of fear and trepidation and disbelief, we question whether or not you would use us. We question if you would even desire to work through us, to love us. And so would you, in this moment and in this place, shatter all of the wrong ideas that we have about you. Holy Spirit, stir in this place. Reveal to us the deep truth that there is nothing that you would let separate us from you. Help us to hear your invitation to new life, to newness, to a second chance, to a new future. And would you hear the prayers that are quiet in our hearts and in our minds? Yes, God, come rescue me. Yes, God, come use me. So we're getting the band back together. I think in the coming days, we pull the band back together. The point, I guess you need to know the point of the exercise is that we've got amazing, talented musicians, people who serve in the band, and I ask a lot of them. I ask about 5 hours a week of volunteer time, which is a big commitment. And they do it because they love you, they love God. And speaking from experience, going to church every Sunday, it's not helping. I take vacation. I take days off. And so I wanted to give the band the very same luxury that I enjoy and that you enjoy. Because I'm trying to remember if all of you were here last Sunday, and the Sunday before, and the Sunday before. So if by chance you're going, man, I really miss the band, know that I'm thinking the same thing. I miss them too. And they deserve a month of vacation. And they're all really excited to come back and be with you. Would you stand? Man, bless you. And I ask the Lord to bless you.